Wellness is the topic, developing at the intersection of health, wellness and fun. It's all about experience. Tony de Leede, come on in. Lovely to see you and thank you for joining us. Grab a seat. Avalon Nethery, come along. How are you?
Good, and you?
Very well, very well. And Chris Lucas, hello and welcome. Welcome to the beautiful Gold Coast. Would you please welcome our panellists this morning, Tony de Leede from Gwinganna, Avalon Nethery from BORNE, and Chris Lucas from the Lucas Group. Firstly, thank you for joining us. It's an interesting topic, this one, because we're really coming at it and looking at the built environment, and looking at real estate, and looking at the experience of all of that from three different angles. You know, Chris, you're one of the best known and most successful restaurateurs in the country. Avalon, you've got an incredible new platform in BORNE that we're going to hear all about. And Tony, you come in from a wellness and an eco pioneer, but also a fitness background as well. I'll leave my introductions there and get you guys to expand firstly just a little bit on what you're doing. Actually, I'll start from that end. Tony, just tell us a little bit about Gwinganna and the broader business that you have and how that sets up for this question around wellness and experience in the built form.
So I've been in fitness and wellness for 40 years. I started a company called Fitness First 25 years ago that you may be familiar with. 2 years after that, I bought a property up in the hinterland in Tullabudger and subsequently developed a very high-end wellness retreat called Gwinganna that's now been open a bit over 18 years. Then just talking with Avalon before, I wasn't going to bring up, but I then opened something in Bali called Commune 13 years ago that is a blend of wellness and pizza and beer and fun. Yeah. Launched a company called Wellness Solutions about 7 or 8 years ago. 2 months ago, I launched another company called Wello Works, which is co-working with wellness. So I guess the key is the evolution, not the evolution, but the who's doing fitness, who's doing wellness. There's a couple of key statistics. There are more people turning 55 than there are turning 25. The 55-year-olds are not into, I didn't grow up with fitness. If you're over 60, fitness centres did not exist. You know, today, 18-year-olds, you do fitness because it's just what you do. So the Gen Z, the take-up in fitness is 60-70%. In the baby boomers, well, there's virtually no take-up because when you get to my age, you're not going to jump around the fitness centre. So anyway, I guess what I want to share with you today is wellness amenities and how they can be appropriate in whether it's a hotel, whether it's an apartment building, whether it's an office building, whether it's a fitness centre. There's no denying that we all, especially when we get to an age where we look at the next 20 years as being our final 20 years, we want to live longer, better. My personal goal is I just want to die young, late in life. You know, and I think, and there's not too many people who would argue against that.
Yeah. Avalon, tell us about BORNE. It's a fascinating journey.
Yeah, so I am a property developer, associate director at Fortis, currently on maternity leave, but I've also just launched BORNE, which is essentially a postpartum hotel, and the goal is to disrupt the maternal hospital sector by providing a facility for people to recover in. So give birth in hospital, don't recover in hospital, recover with us at BORNE. So that was actually born out of my own experience going from an associate director at Fortis to having 2 children and really suffering from postpartum depression and anxiety and realising that I was not alone at all. The stats are far higher than what they say from my market research. And so making sure that, you know, in this critical time in society, where there's lots of socio-economic reasons as to why there is no village anymore. For me, it's about supporting more families and mothers through that postpartum period, particularly as there are more women in the workforce now than there has ever been before.
Can you describe the property play and the service offering and how they come together?
Sure. So to start, we're launching within the Intercontinental in Double Bay. It's just a really low-cost, extra luxury way to start our services and learn, and really develop some incredible IP and the team around the BORNE way and that sort of mother-centric care model, which is very different from a hospital maternity care model, which is sort of baby-focused. So we're really shining the light on a mother's care. And we come from a position of knowing when a mother is nurtured, her whole family will flourish, and that will have impacts on society as a whole. In terms of the property play, it's interesting because there's another developer overseas who's done a similar thing to what I'm doing at the moment. Right. And yeah, I'm looking to build facilities across Australia.
Standalone facilities?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, keep us posted. Chris, from your point of view, you've got, as I said, one of the best reputations in the hospitality industry, so many venues, so many iconic places where nearly everyone in this room has probably experienced. But you also have a deep relationship with the property industry and you work very closely, not just with landlords, but developers looking at new precincts. Just take us through that journey from, initial restaurateur through to where you are now and sort of what's important.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess out of necessity, we started getting more involved on the property side because we wanted to make sure that we were getting the correct outcomes. And, that forced us to get involved in design, concept development, originally helping developers with their vision. Because at the end of the day, and it's certainly happening in the Europe market, it's certainly happening in the North American market, where amenity, restaurants, wellness centres, maybe even BORNE facilities potentially, these are the things that are changing the face of development today. I think in 5 or 10 years' time, I even think it's happening today, that people are making more and more of their decisions on whether they choose to work in a particular building or buy into a particular development based on the amenity. I think in 10 years' time here in Australia, it'll be the first thing they decide on. Yep. Does it have the right amenity? Does it have the right environment? Does it fit my lifestyle? Does it work? Does it fit into my work environment? And it's all tends to be centred around the things that we enjoy. Most of the time we enjoy going out and having something to eat and drink. So we've become more of a property business than we have a restaurant business. And we've become more of a lifestyle business than just a strictly restaurant business as well, because food touches all elements of our life. We spend three times a day usually eating and maybe snacking in between, but socialising is a really important thing. Like I went for a walk here this morning along the boardwalk, and you look at what's happening along the boardwalk. People are walking, enjoying themselves. They're not at work necessarily. I was fascinated to see how many young people are walking along the boardwalk when I would have thought they might be at work. But they've changed. Probably their bosses are thinking the same thing. So, the funny thing is
they're working from home. Yeah,
they're working from home. So, so what that does is it changes the way that we should be developing. It changes the way we should be entertaining, and it changes what we should be building for the future.
So how then are you geared up as a business? So I want to understand how you sort of transition there. You're now more of a property business. What's the relationship that you've got now with developers and landlords, and how much are you taking on and how much is you expecting the developer to do?
Well, at least half our business now is where we own our own properties and are developing our own properties. Right. And then the other half of business is more and more so the old way of doing business, i.e. Someone builds a building or a development or a residential tower and then rings up the local real estate agent and says, look, I need my retail filled at X amount of dollars per square metre. I think that model is pretty much defunct. Where we're trying to get the most optimum result is getting involved as early as we can in the process. We either form a partnership sometimes, a JV, or we get involved with large-scale developers, let's say like RETS, where we actually get involved at the design stage. Because we feel as if we know how best people interact with spaces when it comes to F&B, for instance, rather than, an architect that's focused perhaps on the total structure. We have a specific view of how the food retail needs to work. And then we work with the developers to try and add value to their overall development. Like I said to you, most of the inquiries that we get today are about the amenity. If you're going to get involved in a development, tell me what the restaurants look like. Tell me what the wellness looks like. if you talk about end-of-trip facilities, I mean, that's an old, outdated model. Most of the end-of-trip facilities are sitting there empty. And they're spending a lot of money and they take up a lot of real estate. But if you put 3 or 4 restaurants in there, or if you modernise the wellness concept, these are the things that people want and want to engage with. So for us to be able to get the end result right, we're now getting involved, as I said to you, more intimately with the development, the developer. And so we're doing fewer and fewer projects, but we're doing more transformational projects. So we want to do projects that really do have an impact and really strive to make a big change in what we do in both the work and residential space.
Yeah. I want to jump into the projects now because I think it's at that very tangible level that we sort of get the deepest understanding of what we're talking about here. Tony, back to your one of the site tours that we held on Tuesday, went out to Gwinganna and your new development as well. And I overheard someone speaking about it at the welcome party, and they were talking about the fact that you effectively had to self-fund the whole thing because no one wanted to bank a deal like that, and how brave it was to do that in the first place and pioneering. Can you just take us through how you got through being a bit of a pioneer in that space and how you overcame the traditional hurdles of property development to execute on what you've got?
Yeah, just quickly, both Gwinganna and Eco Retreat, I substantially self-funded. Fortunately, I did well out of Fitness First because I sold a couple of times, so I had the money to sink it in, but it was a pretty big gamble. I was betting on the future, which is that people want to live a better life. And these are unique businesses. What I'd rather sort of, if I can, is address what all of you are into. And Chris, I think, touched on it many times. You've talked about the amenities. It's, in my mind, going forward, it's the sizzle that sells the steak. And your steak is your building, your offices, your senior living, your commercial buildings. Increasingly, whether it be the restaurant side, or, people spend a lot on plants and waterfalls and beautiful aesthetic things that mean, they look fabulous. I don't want to put them down and say they mean nothing. But if you have meaningful amenities, and I agree, end of trip was primarily driven for cyclists. Cyclists make up 5 to 10% of the population. So end of trip facilities, which are now mandated, I don't know if it is in Queensland, but in New South Wales, I believe Victoria, they are mandated. Smart operators are figuring out how can we turn that into a wellness centre. And fitness. I mean, fitness has been around a lot longer than wellness. You need to cater to the 10 to 15% that want fitness because they're very passionate, they're very avid, and they're very loud. They make a lot more noise than the other 80%. Who a bit quietly want to have some type of wellness. Now, what does that look like? It looks like 100, just like food is 100 different things, so is wellness. We provide wellness pods, as we call them, in our wellness solutions business. And I won't elaborate on what it is, other than there's the evolution of wellness is now, it's kind of like AI. It's moving very fast. And there's different products, concepts, content, all types of ways, on demand, digital, everything else. And smart operators are looking at how do we put these lifestyle amenities into our buildings. Last night, one of the awards was a company called Total Fusion. For those of you here last night, Total Fusion sits in Cav Corp. Damien, I don't know if anybody is here from Cav Corp. It's surrounded the Total Fusion, which is about the best wellness centre I've ever seen in the world. And I travel the world a lot, and I'm very familiar with what's out there. And Leon McNeese, who's in partnership, he wasn't here because he's out floating around Europe somewhere. But Total Fusion, from what I understand, has added $50,000 to $100,000 per unit. So other units, 2-bedders around there, we're getting nowhere near the pricing that Cav Corp was getting because they put in a mind-blowing amenity. Now, they went to the extreme, but they still, I think, got their money back because he had 300 or 400 apartments. If you're getting an average of 50 to 100,000, let's call it 75, and he spent 30 mil, it's a wash. And yes, and then they'll stay and they'll appreciate faster. So that's at one end of the spectrum. But every office building, apartment building, senior living building, there's no places where wellness doesn't fit. So I think if you are looking to the future and looking how you can enhance the value of the property that you are building or developing, figure out how, and it doesn't take up a lot of space either. You can do wellness very, very cleverly. You know, you don't need massive amounts of freeways. That's fitness, and again, it's a smaller market. You know, a lot of people are intimidated by that stuff. Yes, I was in fitness first and we did extremely well, but we catered to 15% of the market. There's 80% that were intimidated, uncomfortable, just didn't want to go there. But they are interested in wellness, but it's many different things. So I know I moved a little bit off what you specifically asked me, but I feel like that's a bit more appropriate.
And I completely agree. I mean, for anyone that gets to Brisbane and has a look at Total Fusion and what's done there, it's 9,000 square metre wellness centre. Like it's crazy. So and agree, it's the best thing I've seen in the world as well, and a worthy recipient of the award.
They got the big bucks for the apartments. That's the key thing. Cavcorp is smart. They built 400 apartments around it, and they got about $30-40 million extra at $100,000 an apartment, and it paid for it.
Yeah, Avalon, I understand the property brief that sits behind BORNE, and how that might connect in with other projects or other opportunities that exist out here in the industry. What is the brief of BORNE? How many rooms, space? Like, is it like that, or is it not like?
Yes and no.
Is it an
I guess
occupier, or is it?
Is it what? Sorry?
Is BORNE an occupier that would plug into a developer's project, or is it?
Yeah, it certainly could, you know, if there was commercial space available, as long as you have sort of probably separate entries and exits. But I think it's, for me to start BORNE initially within the Intercon, that decision was driven by, you know, extremely exquisite service and making sure that we had an operator behind our operations that was supplying that extra level and that internationally acclaimed training of staff. So having bellboys at the front door and, you know, whatever goes wrong, we can always lean back on that extra service. But I think speaking to both of your points before, and as a property developer, I think it's okay for anyone and any developer just to throw a sauna, an ice bath, and a couple of features into an end-of-trip facility. But I think we've got to look at buildings like the Honeypot and go, how do we drive people and make people not want to work at home? And how do we activate these places and spaces? And it's through a compounding effect of, you know, so many little decisions. It might be the sauna, the ice bath, the pods, but also thinking about what are the ceiling heights? Are there operable windows and louvers? Can you have your lunch outside without going down to the ground floor? And so many little micro decisions that compound to create a great place. And I think that's really where in Australia we've got an amazing opportunity in our commercial mixed use buildings, particularly if you're a developer that's holding on to things or if you're a developer that cares about legacy and making sure that you're leaving one and how people are using your buildings.
Yeah. We heard Kate Merrick talk yesterday about feminising cities, and obviously the property industry is heavily male dominated, and I think a lot of the blokes in the room with the best intentions don't quite know how to navigate some of the things associated with women and motherhood and other parts of it. So can you sort of share with us some of the, and you talked to a few examples there, some of the design philosophies that the broader industry can adopt that sort of sit in with obviously what you're doing, but that make for better built environment and better experiences for women and for mothers and for the broader community?
Yeah, sure. I think hire more women.
Good start.
Hire more women in high places as well, obviously. I think there's something really amazing to be said when you have a boardroom full of men and there's a woman in there and she's actually softening it or, you know, bringing some strength to the table when it needs to be brought. But certainly, I think as we are evolving, as there are more women in the workforce and as companies are, you know, creating really amazing parental leave policies, which mean that more men are becoming involved at home and sharing responsibilities. How are we designing workplaces then for families and for the future, you know, societies and for people to, I mean, there's kind of a school of thought, right? You either separate your work life and your home life, or you are so obsessed with your work and your purpose and your passion, and I know that's the case for a lot of property developers, that becomes blended and work is life. So how are these buildings responding to that? And I think you can look at a new shared workplace concept called Bubba Desk. They are, providing these amazing childcare facilities in co-working spaces. So I think it's initiatives like that so that you can come into work at 7 a.m, drop the kids, do your work, run down at lunchtime and see the kids. Like, we've got to stop. I think the way that commercial models are still working isn't family-led necessarily, and there are a lot of women who are getting taken out of roles and senior positions who could be bringing a lot to our world that aren't, because they're not able to go back to work because of so many different reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Chris, I want to jump into specific projects that you're working on as well. You've got a great partnership with QIC, your projects in Melbourne, I think Canberra as well. Can you just, and others, can you just take us through how you're getting to that very front end place-making, precinct-making work, and just talk to the specifics of some of those projects?
Well, the original project that we did with QIC, which was 80 Collins Street, which some of you may be aware of, was again a major transformational project for the City of Melbourne. It was the Paris Centre Collins Street, what they referred to the Paris Centre Collins Street, on the corner of Collins and Exhibition Street. So it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to actually create proper world-class F&B amenity in probably the most prestigious part of Melbourne's real estate. Originally, the concept of QIC was to build a food court and go down the traditional route. But they also had ambitions about having luxury retail there and having, Macquarie Bank, for instance, ended up being the anchor tenant in the corporate tower. Neither of those parties wanted a food court. So, and for obvious reasons, it's a model that's probably been developed 30 or 40 years ago. There's nothing healthy about it in most cases, and if it is, it might look healthy, but it probably still really isn't. And it certainly doesn't add anything from an amenity point of view. It doesn't make the workplace any more interesting. So we sat down with them and we tore up the whole plan and redesigned what we defined as world-class amenity. So we made it more bespoke. We made it about beautiful a la carte restaurants, sophisticated bars, amazing private rooms that actually service the corporate tower. So once those plans were developed, as an example, a lot of the tenants in the building defitted what were going to be their commercial kitchens and meeting rooms. Why pay $3,000 or $4,000 a square metre for a room that you've got to go and hire some chef to cook some chicken, when you've got a world-class amenity downstairs that has some of the best private rooms in the city?
Yeah.
Those private rooms now are virtually used almost 100% utilisation. Even on a Monday, they'll be full on a lunch and a dinner, which previously you wouldn't have thought was possible. So, and of course, it's added value to the entire complex. Today, 80 Collins Street is known as the home of society. No one talks about it as the headquarters for Macquarie Bank. The retail is prospering. For instance, with St. Laurent, we supply St. Laurent downstairs something like 3 or 4 cases of Dom Perignon every week. We provide them with about 2.5, 3 kilos of caviar every week. And we provide a customised service in-house for them because a lot of their retail is now done by appointment. So they're chasing high net worth consumers. They want to be looked after. And then afterwards, perhaps they might want to go up to a beautiful bar and have something to eat and drink. So it's a whole different way of retailing for them as well.
Yep.
Now, that is the template for the future for that type of development. 435 Burke Street, which is going to be the new home of Commonwealth Bank, is a Cbus development. Cbus would admit themselves it had a very checkered history about how they did and dealt with amenity and food amenity. And led to some pretty poor outcomes. They got us involved at the very beginning, at the design stage. We actually changed the entire facade at the retail podium, the first 3 or 4 levels. Cost a lot of money, but they've got an outcome now which is going to be one of the most attractive buildings in Australia. It's one of the greenest buildings in Australia. we're revolutionising the way we are cooking in that building. It's all electric. It's going to be the most advanced kitchen in Australia. We're cooking Asian food without gas, which is going to be, again, groundbreaking. And it's changing the whole dynamic of that building. So all of a sudden, that building's gone from being a corporate tower that was, its selling point was about being green, which, ticks a lot of boxes. But at the end of the day, people do have a feel-good factor about that. But what they're really interested in is, where do I go and eat? Where do I meet? They don't want to meet in meeting rooms anymore. So the same story. Commonwealth Bank defitted all their internal boardrooms, and we've created 6 new world-class boardrooms that'll be, or private rooms, in both the new restaurants. We're doing a Greek Mediterranean restaurant and a Chinese Asian restaurant, as well as the coffee area. And again, the corporates are really jumping at it, paying a premium in what is a pretty tough market at the moment. It's probably the only tower at the moment that looks like it's going ahead, but a lot of the other towers are struggling because they're not adding value. So look, we're in a death spiral here in terms of costs, if anyone hasn't noticed in Australia. Thanks to a whole lot of factors, everything is going up at an exponential rate, far beyond what sometimes the market can absorb. There's only so much marble you can buy. There's only so many trees you can plant. There's only so much aesthetic that you can add to your building. The green challenges are only adding extra cost. So we're not going down in cost, we're going up in cost. So how do we make our products work, our real estate work? It's got to be adding value, making it more interesting, adding the human element to it. And for us, as far as I'm concerned, if you can't get the amenity right, you're not going to get it off the ground, probably, because the market's getting more competitive in terms of amenity. City councils around Australia are all singing the same hymn. What does amenity look like at the ground level? How does it work on a Saturday and Sunday, not just a Monday to Friday? How does it make your development look attractive 10 years from today? And so I think if we focus on value, we focus on vision, we focus on making these things interesting, all driven through this clever and world-class amenity approach at the design stage, where we're sitting down with like-minded people, then that, I think, is part of the solution for dealing with this huge cost spiral that we're facing.
Interesting. We're almost out of time, but I just want to get one more perspective. Tony's got something to say.
I'll give you an interesting one. Chris and I are in the total opposite ends of the spectrum. I guess I'll sum it up by saying
I'm fit. I'm reasonably fit for that.
I'm sure you are, mate. I won't dispute that with you. I might go for a walk on the boardwalk tomorrow with you, and we'll see how we pace each other.
I did 10K.
And I'm not disagreeing with what Chris is saying, but essentially he fattens them up, I slim them down. And again, if you want to live longer, better, listen, eat good food, and my
red wine's full of antioxidants.
Oh no, mate! Listen, I drink more wine and more sweets than most people in the room here. But I am very active. I still teach. I was kidding around with yes.
Avalon.
Avalon. Sorry, Avalon.
It's okay.
I even still teach body pump classes at the age of 72. I think I'm the oldest body pump teacher in Australia. So amenities, whatever the amenities are, and there's a whole spectrum of amenities, but I think lifestyle is the key word. You use it, we've all used lifestyle. We all approach lifestyle differently. But the key, I think the most important thing in lifestyle is living longer, better. And how do you do that? And that's where we, you provide enjoyment and community and conversation and laughter. We do things that make you live longer, better, and we do it in many different ways. So,
I mean, it's people-centric design from the beginning.
Yeah. And creating an environment where, as you said before, employers are struggling to get their employees to come back to work, and creating more amenities, will get them back in, and also it'll justify better rents. Again, from a commercial perspective, you can sell it for higher prices, you can maintain them longer, you can rent the things for higher, all of the different things that matter to all of you, because you're all in various businesses, whether you're selling, retaining, renting, whatever you're doing, amenities, and we are at one end, which is the wellness amenity, which we think is extremely important.
It's an amazing discussion. Thank you very much for joining us. Would you please thank our panellists this morning? Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks. All right. Thanks, Tony. Cheers.